It began as a whisper in the cosmic winds, a distant rumble among the stars. The galactic empire known as the Vrax Dominion, a ruthless and technologically advanced alien species, had set its sights on Earth. They believed themselves the pinnacle of civilization, convinced that their unmatched weaponry and vast fleets made them invincible. But humanity, in its ignorance of the galaxy's true dangers, never saw them coming. The first attack was swift and brutal. Without warning, the Vrax fleet descended upon Earth, their warships blotting out the sky in a blackened tide. Cities crumbled, governments fell, and the human race was left reeling in the wake of the devastation. For the first time in recorded history, Earth was forced to surrender. The Vrax, seeing humanity as primitive and expendable, enslaved the survivors, making them laborers for their imperial war machine. But there was one thing the Vrax didn't account for: humanity's unyielding spirit. Even in the darkest moments, humans fought back, not with strength or advanced weapons, but with something far more powerful: ingenuity, unity, and resilience. It started with a whisper of defiance in the underground resistance networks. Humans, scattered and broken, found each other. Old military leaders, engineers, hackers, and ordinary citizens, all brought together by the burning desire to reclaim their world. They fought with whatever they had, sabotaging the Vrax supply lines and striking at their weak points. Among the resistance leaders was Captain Rachel Hayes, a former military strategist whose family had been lost during the initial attack. She had watched her home city, New York, burn from the safety of a hidden bunker. The loss had been personal, but it fueled her determination. She was not a leader by choice but by necessity. With her expertise, the resistance began to organize, striking at Vrax strongholds across the globe. They couldn't win by brute force, not yet, but they could outsmart their captors. One evening, while analyzing data recovered from a Vrax surveillance satellite, Rachel uncovered something that would change the course of the war. There was a Vrax artifact, a powerful energy core, that could potentially give humanity the leverage they needed to challenge the Dominion's control. But it was located deep within the heart of the Vrax capital, a place where no human had ever set foot. The artifact was known as the Helix Core, an energy source capable of powering the most advanced technologies, perhaps even creating weapons that could match the Vrax's might. If Rachel and her team could infiltrate the Vrax homeworld, steal the Helix Core, and reverse-engineer its power, they could shift the balance in their favor. The mission was risky. Impossible, even. Yet, it was the only option left. If they failed, humanity's resistance would be crushed. If they succeeded, they would have the weaponry to fight back, to stand toe-to-toe with the Vrax Empire and demand justice. Rachel's mind raced as she weighed the decision. The path forward was unclear, but one thing was certain: Earth had been humbled enough. Now, the time for revenge had arrived. The resistance gathered, preparing for the greatest heist in human history. Their target was more than just an artifact; it was a symbol of humanity's fight for survival, for vengeance, and for the future of a world that had been nearly destroyed. As the days counted down to their daring mission, Rachel stood at the front lines, watching the stars twinkle above. They were no longer helpless. Humanity would fight back, and they would win, not by the power of their enemies, but by the power of their unbreakable will. In the depths of space, as the Vrax Dominion ruled with an iron fist, a spark of rebellion was igniting on a small, fragile planet called Earth. A spark that, if fanned, would burn bright enough to consume the stars themselves. The fight for Earth had only just begun. The Resistance's plan to infiltrate the Vrax capital was a daring one, and its success relied on a fragile web of alliances, technology, and sheer audacity. As the preparations went underway, Rachel and her most trusted officers met in a secluded bunker beneath the ruins of what had once been a military base in the Nevada desert. The map of the Vrax Empire was spread out before them, its intricate details showing not just military installations, but trade routes, weak spots in their defense network, and, most importantly, the location of the Helix Core. "This is our chance," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the weight of the mission. "But we need to hit them hard and fast. The Vrax will have no idea what hit them." Commander Jake Turner, her second-in-command and an expert in covert operations, was already running simulations on his datapad. His face was grim, his fingers flying over the screen as he mapped out possible routes for their strike team. "The Vraks have underestimated us before," he said, looking up. "But we have to account for every scenario. If even one of our ships is detected, the entire mission goes to hell." Rachel nodded. "We're going in with a small strike force. A few ships, highly trained operatives. We can't afford a large-scale operation, they'll notice us too soon. And we need the core intact, not destroyed." "I'm working on a stealth prototype," said Dr. Eliza Nguyen, the lead scientist of the Resistance. "It's not perfect, but it should be able to bypass their sensors. At least long enough for us to get in and out." The prototype was a hybrid ship, combining human ingenuity with salvaged Vraks technology. The ship's cloaking systems, though untested, could mask their presence long enough to slip past the Dominion's watchful eyes. But there were risks. The Vraks were ruthless, and their fleet patrols were vigilant. The slightest slip-up could trigger an all-out assault, and Rachel wasn't sure humanity was ready for that. "We don't have the luxury of time," Rachel said, her gaze locking onto the faces around her. "Every day the Vraks occupy Earth is another day our people suffer. We move tonight. Everyone's on standby. Let's make this count." Hours later, the stealth ships lifted off from their hidden base, the hum of the engines barely audible as they soared into the night sky. Rachel stood in the cockpit of her ship, eyes fixed on the stars, her thoughts a whirlwind of strategy and anticipation. Their destination was a sector of space known as the Shattered Expanse, a vast region of debris and broken worlds that surrounded the Vraks' homeworld. It was a maze of hazards, perfect for slipping under the Dominion's radar. The journey was long, and silence reigned among the crew. Everyone knew the stakes. Failure meant more than just death, it meant the end of humanity's fight for survival. As they approached the outer edge of the Vraks Empire, the tension was palpable. But Rachel's resolve never wavered. She had seen the suffering of her people, the destruction of her world, and she would not let that be in vain. They neared the capital. The massive Vraks flagship, a looming fortress that resembled a giant, jagged spire of metal, loomed ahead. Its presence was a constant reminder of their enemy's dominance. The Resistance fleet entered the shadow of the expanse, hidden by the cosmic dust, a fleeting speck in the vastness of space. Eliza's voice crackled over the comms. "We've reached the edge of their sensor grid. We should be undetected for now." Rachel's heart beat faster. This was it. They were moments away from executing the most dangerous part of the plan, the insertion into the Vraks capital. "Remember," Rachel instructed her team, "we're here for one thing, the core. Nothing else matters. Keep your heads down, stick to the plan, and stay in communication. We only get one shot at this." The ships activated their cloaking systems, blending into the background of space. They navigated through the debris field, evading Vraks patrols and using the dust clouds as cover. The closer they got to the capital, the more the weight of the mission settled over Rachel. She could feel the eyes of her fallen comrades, the lives of those lost, pressing on her shoulders. A sudden burst of static interrupted her thoughts. "Incoming ship. Vraks patrol." Jake's voice was tense, urgent. "They've detected something." Rachel's heart raced. They'd been found. The whole mission could fall apart in an instant. "Steady," she commanded, her voice calm despite the rising chaos. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. If we fight, we won't make it past their defenses. Eliza, can we jam their sensors?" "I'm on it." Eliza responded quickly, typing furiously on her console. The enemy ship loomed larger, its massive guns charging up, ready to fire. But before the Vraks could get a shot off, Eliza's voice came through again. "Sensor jam complete. They can't track us. We're clear." The Vraks ship passed by, none the wiser to their presence. The crew let out a collective breath, but Rachel's mind never stopped. There was no room for error. They had to reach the core. Everything depended on it. As the stealth ships continued their perilous journey into the heart of enemy space, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. The battle for Earth's future was about to reach its most critical moment. The strike team had made it to the Vrax capital without detection, but the real challenge lay ahead, infiltrating the heart of the Empire, the massive spire-shaped citadel that housed the Helix core. The Resistance had studied the structure for months, and every piece of intel they had gathered pointed to a near-impenetrable fortress. The Vrax capital was a towering, labyrinthine complex of indestructible alloys, guarded by an elite army in a vast array of automated defense systems. Rachel stood in the cockpit of the stealth ship, staring at the shimmering glow of the capital below. The towering spire, surrounded by floating platforms and colossal defense arrays, seemed invincible. And yet, the Helix core lay within its core, a prize they couldn't afford to leave behind. Approaching the docking platform, Jake's voice crackled over the comms. "We're going to have to make this quick. Once we land, we'll have less than 5 minutes before the alarm goes off." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. 5 minutes. That was all they had. The ship descended rapidly, skimming across the perimeter of the capital, its cloaking device shielding it from detection. As they neared the designated docking bay, Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. Every second felt like an eternity. The air inside the ship was thick with tension, but there was no room for fear. "We're on final approach," Rachel said, turning to face her team. "Remember, the core is at the very heart of the citadel. We need to move fast and strike hard. Everyone stick to your roles, and don't deviate from the plan." The ship touched down with a soft thud, its landing gear making barely a sound. The moment the ramp lowered, Rachel was the first to step out, her boots making contact with the cold, metallic floor of the Vrax base. The silence was oppressive, and the dim, pulsating light from the walls made the space feel alien and foreboding. "We're in," Jake muttered, his voice tense. "Let's move." The team, clad in black tactical armor, moved with precision, each member silent but alert. They navigated the long, winding hallways, avoiding patrols by sticking to the shadows, their steps echoing faintly through the cold corridors. As they ventured deeper into the citadel, Rachel couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale of the structure. The walls were lined with strange alien symbols, glowing faintly in eerie hues of purple and blue, and the air was thick with the hum of advanced machinery. It felt less like a building and more like a living organism. Their first obstacle appeared sooner than expected, a massive, reinforced blast door blocking their path. It was protected by a sophisticated security system, but Eliza wasted no time in deploying a hacking device. She knelt before the terminal, her fingers dancing across the keys with practiced ease. Within moments, the door clicked open. "Got it," Eliza said, her voice barely audible. "This way." The deeper they went, the more they could feel the presence of the Vrax. The halls became more heavily guarded, and automated turrets were scattered along the corridors. But the Resistance had trained for this, and their stealth tactics kept them a step ahead. They were ghosts in the machine. As they approached the inner sanctum, Rachel's pulse quickened. The Helix core was within their grasp, but so was danger. The final stretch of their journey led them into a grand chamber, a massive hall lined with towering pillars of black metal, illuminated by an eerie blue glow. At the center of the room stood the Helix core, a swirling, unstable mass of energy encased in a crystalline structure. Rachel couldn't help but stare at it, a feeling of awe and dread washing over her. This was it. The power that could turn the tide of war. But the moment she stepped forward, the chamber's lights flickered, and the sound of heavy boots echoed in the distance. The Vrax were onto them. "Shit," Jake hissed. "They've found us. We've got incoming." Rachel's mind raced. There was no time to waste. They had to act quickly. "Eliza, get to the core." "Jake, cover her." Rachel shouted, her voice sharp. "I'll hold them off." The team moved in sync, their training kicking in as they split to cover their objectives. Eliza sprinted toward the Helix core, her eyes fixed on the prize, while Jake laid down suppressive fire, cutting down incoming Vrax soldiers with deadly accuracy. Rachel, meanwhile, sprinted toward the door at the far end of the chamber, setting up an ambush for the soldiers pouring into the room. She knew they didn't have much time before reinforcements arrived. The sounds of gunfire and explosions echoed through the chamber as the resistance made their stand. The battle was intense. The Vrax soldiers were formidable, their advanced weaponry giving them the upper hand in terms of firepower, but the humans had something the Vrax never anticipated: ferocity and determination. Every shot fired, every move made, was driven by the desire to reclaim their home and avenge their fallen comrades. Almost there. Eliza called out, her voice strained as she worked to extract the helix core from its containment. But just as she was about to disengage the core, a high-pitched alarm blared throughout the citadel. The Vrax had triggered a full-scale lockdown. "We're running out of time," Rachel shouted, gritting her teeth as she fired at the oncoming Vrax soldiers. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down. The door to the chamber slammed shut, sealing them inside. The Vrax reinforcements were arriving, and the only way out was the path they had come in. "Eliza, we need that core now," Rachel yelled, her voice desperate. With a final push, Eliza yanked the core free. It was humming with power, its energy crackling in the air. The mission was a success. But now, they had to survive long enough to get back to the ship and escape. The Resistance was about to face its greatest challenge yet, escaping the Vrax capital with the Helix core and surviving the oncoming storm. The moment Eliza secured the Helix core, an overwhelming sense of urgency gripped the team. The mission was a success, but escaping with the prize was a whole different beast. The citadel was locked down, the halls now swarming with Vrax soldiers and automated defenses that would obliterate them if they didn't move fast enough. "We have what we came for, but we need to get the hell out of here, now," Rachel barked, her voice carrying over the chaos. She could hear the Vrax soldiers pounding on the doors of the chamber, their heavy boots echoing in unison as they closed in. The automated turrets, once passive, hummed to life, their targeting systems locking onto the intruders. The odds of getting out unscathed were slim. But Rachel had seen worse odds before, and she was determined to make this escape their triumph. Jake nodded grimly, already moving toward the exit. "We fight our way out. Keep pushing forward, don't get bogged down." Eliza, clutching the humming helix core close to her chest, nodded but didn't speak. Her mind was already racing, calculating the steps ahead, while the rest of the team moved in perfect sync. The plan was simple: reach the docking bay, board the ship, and escape before the Vrax could mobilize their entire fleet. Simple in theory, but the reality was far more dangerous. As they burst from the chamber, the group immediately encountered a hail of blaster fire. The Vrax were on them, their weapons crackling with the power of their advanced technology. Jake fired back with precision, his shots finding their mark as he provided cover. Rachel kept a low profile, dodging between pillars and using the environment to her advantage, moving swiftly as she exchanged fire with the enemy. Her mind raced with every decision, every calculation of risk. "Keep moving," Rachel shouted. "We can't afford a standoff." The team advanced through the winding halls, the sound of blaster fire and the whirring of the turrets growing louder with each passing moment. They reached the blast doors they had previously passed through, the only way out. "Eliza, can you override the door?" Jake asked, turning as he heard the sound of reinforcements rounding the corner. Eliza's fingers danced over the control panel, her face set in determination. "Just a second. I can do it, but it'll take time. We need to hold them off." Rachel knew that time was their most dangerous enemy now. If they were cornered, if they didn't break through that door, they wouldn't make it to the ship. But she refused to let that happen. "Jake, take point," she ordered. With deadly precision, Jake stepped forward, unleashing a barrage of suppressive fire at the Vrax soldiers rushing toward them. The intense noise of the blasters, the crackling of energy shields, and the pounding of boots reverberated through the narrow corridor. They were on the edge of disaster, but there was no turning back. Eliza's voice crackled through the comms, "The override is almost done. Just hold them off a little longer." Rachel sprinted to the side, ducking behind a wall as blaster fire zoomed past her. She peeked out, assessing their position. "We're close," she shouted. "Just a little more." The Vraks were relentless. Their strength and advanced tactics were unlike anything humanity had faced before. They had fought valiantly to reach this point, but Rachel knew this next stretch would be the hardest. They would need to push past wave after wave of Vraks forces, and the only way out was through. A sharp hiss echoed through the corridor as the blast doors began to open, but just as they started to budge, a massive explosion rattled the entire structure. The shockwave sent Rachel sprawling to the ground, her ears ringing. The blast doors slammed shut once more, this time locked with no apparent override. "Eliza!" Rachel yelled, trying to get to her feet. "What happened?" "I don't know," Eliza replied, her voice strained. "I'm still trying to hack through it, but the system's gone haywire. It's like they've reconfigured the doors remotely." The Vrak soldiers were closing in, and now they were trapped between the blast doors and an entire battalion of heavily armed enemies. The time for retreat was over. It was a fight to the death if they were to make it out alive. Rachel's mind raced. The ship, the escape, none of it mattered if they couldn't get past this door. She looked at Jake, and he knew exactly what she was thinking. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. "Eliza, get back!" Rachel commanded. "Jake, prepare for a full assault on the door." The plan was desperate. The core of the door's security was powerful, but not invincible. If they could overload the system with enough firepower, they might force it open. But with the Vraks bearing down on them, they had seconds to make their move. Jake, with his usual focus and precision, grabbed a set of explosives from his pack. He rigged them to the door's main control panel, using the limited tools at his disposal. The countdown began, 5 seconds. 4. "Eliza, get back!" Jake shouted, throwing himself into cover. The explosion was deafening, a burst of energy that lit up the hallway in blinding white light. The door was blown open, but it came at a cost. The shockwave sent all of them to the ground, their vision swimming as the air crackled with static. For a brief, terrifying moment, Rachel thought they had failed. But the blast doors were open, and the way to the docking bay was clear. "Go! Go! Go!" Rachel roared, her voice hoarse as she pushed herself up, adrenaline flooding her veins. "The ship is just ahead." With the blast doors behind them, they surged forward, running at full speed. Every footstep counted. Every second felt like an eternity. As they neared the docking bay, the sounds of the Vrak soldiers echoed through the corridors, too many to count, all intent on stopping them. They were close. So close. Rachel reached the docking bay first, her eyes scanning the horizon. There, nestled between the towering structures of the Citadel, was the stealth ship, waiting to take them home. "Eliza, hand me the core!" Rachel shouted. Eliza passed it over, her hands trembling. It was heavy, powerful. The prize they had fought so hard for. And now, it was their key to survival. They boarded the ship, the engines already humming to life. The crew didn't look back. Their hearts pounded, but they knew one thing above all else: they had what they came for. And now they had a future to fight for. The moment the last member of the team stepped onto the ship, the heavy blast doors of the docking bay slammed shut behind them with a deafening clang. Rachel wasted no time, moving swiftly toward the cockpit, her hands already navigating the controls. The rest of the team scrambled to their stations, each member performing their duties without a word, their focus sharpened by the realization that the hardest part was still to come. "Engines at full power," Eliza reported from the comms panel. "We're ready to go, but we've got incoming Vrak ships." Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. The escape was never going to be easy. The Vraks had surely detected the ship's sudden departure, and their pursuit would be swift and relentless. With the Helix core in their possession, their only advantage was speed. The Vracs wouldn't give up easily. "Jake, you've got gunnery," Rachel barked. "Eliza, help with navigation, prepare for evasive maneuvers. We need to get out of this sector, now." With practiced precision, the ship's engines roared to life. The small vessel shot forward, cutting through the labyrinth of the Citadel's docking platforms. The air was filled with the hum of the thrusters as they tore through the air, weaving between towering structures, trying to gain enough speed to make a break for open space. But the Vracs were already in motion. Rachel could see the enemy ships emerging from hidden docking bays, their sleek, angular forms cutting through the sky like a swarm of predatory birds. Their weapons were charging up, ready to unleash a deadly barrage at the escaping resistance ship. "Shit, they're fast," Jake muttered as he locked onto a target. He fired the ship's first volley, blasting a Vrax interceptor into a ball of fire. But there were more. Many more. Rachel's pulse quickened. She pushed the ship's engines to their limits, narrowly dodging blasts from the pursuing Vrax vessels. She could feel the sweat on her brow as the ship shuddered with every close call. The blast shields flickered with each impact, but the hull held. "Eliza, can you take us through the expanse?" Rachel asked, her voice tight with determination. "We need to lose them in the debris field." The shattered expanse was a region of space riddled with ancient asteroids, broken moons, and massive wrecks, perfect cover for any ship trying to escape pursuit. But it was also a dangerous, treacherous stretch of space, full of hidden hazards. "I can do it," Eliza replied, her hands flying across the navigation console. "But it's going to be rough. We'll need to take some risks." Rachel didn't hesitate. "Do it." The ship veered sharply to the left, diving into the dense asteroid field, the engine screaming as they pushed through the debris. Every second was a fight for survival. The Vrax ships followed, relentless, their advanced targeting systems easily tracking the fleeing resistance vessel. Rachel's mind raced as she executed a series of rapid maneuvers, dodging asteroids and using the massive debris chunks as shields. The sound of blaster fire filled the ship, the hum of energy blasts colliding with the hull sending vibrations through the entire craft. But the stealth ship held together, its reinforced armor doing its job, barely. "This is insane!" Jake shouted, firing another round at an enemy ship that got too close. "I can't get a clear shot with all this debris." "We don't need clear shots," Rachel growled, her hands steady on the controls. "We need to survive long enough to get to the edge of the expanse. Once we're there, we can jump to a secure location." Eliza's fingers flew across the navigation console as she expertly steered them through a minefield of debris. "We've got incoming Vrax reinforcements," she reported. "They're setting up an interception grid ahead of us." "Damn it!" Rachel muttered, her mind already formulating their next move. "Eliza, can you cut the ship's energy output for a few seconds? Make us appear as just another piece of debris?" It was a risky move. The Vrax were notorious for their advanced sensor technology, and any slight irregularity would give them away. But if they could blend in with the asteroid field long enough, they might have a chance to evade capture. "I can try," Eliza replied, voice tense. As Eliza began executing the emergency energy shutdown, Rachel began a series of evasive maneuvers that would make the ship appear to be part of the field. They used the drifting asteroids as cover, hiding behind the largest debris they could find, hoping that the Vrax couldn't detect their vessel amid the chaos of space. But it wasn't enough. The Vrax ships began to close in, their sensor pulses sweeping over the area like a web closing in on its prey. "We're not going to make it," Jake said grimly, as he fired another volley of missiles at an approaching Vrax ship. "There's too many of them. If we don't break free soon, we're dead." Rachel's eyes narrowed. There was no time for fear. She had one last trick up her sleeve, an untested maneuver that could either buy them the time they needed to escape or destroy the ship entirely. "Hold on tight," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I'm going for a blind jump." Without waiting for a response, she slammed her hands down onto the hyperdrive controls. The ship lurched violently as it engaged the jump drive, hurtling them into the unknown. The massive shockwave of energy from the jump caused everything to momentarily go black. The ship groaned under the strain as they plummeted into the fold of space. For several tense moments, there was no sound. No movement. No signs of life. Then, with a sudden jolt, the ship stabilized. The lights flickered back on, and the familiar hum of the engines returned. "We made it," Eliza whispered, disbelief in her voice. "We're out of their range." Rachel took a long, shaky breath as she navigated their new course. They were far from the Vrax capital, safely tucked away in an uncharted system. But they were far from safe. They had the core, but their escape had come at a cost. No one knew just how long it would take for the Vrax to regroup and launch another assault. "We need to lay low," Rachel said, her voice grim. "They'll be after us. But we've got the core. Now we just need to figure out how to use it to finish this war." The stealth ship drifted through the quiet expanse of an uncharted system, far from the blood-stained hands of the Vrax Empire. The crew, exhausted but alive, sat in the dimly lit interior of their vessel, the only sound the steady hum of the engines. The ship was in one piece, but their mission had left scars, physical and emotional. Rachel stood at the helm, staring out into the vast, silent emptiness of space. They had escaped, but now what? The helix core pulsed quietly beside her, locked in a secure compartment, its power still uncertain. They had made it this far, but the true test had yet to begin. The core was humanity's most powerful weapon, but they didn't yet know how to wield it. "Do you think it was worth it?" Jake asked, stepping up behind Rachel, his voice quiet. His normally sharp eyes seemed distant, clouded by the weight of their survival. "All the sacrifices, all the bloodshed, we don't even know what we've got here." Rachel turned, meeting his gaze. "We had no choice. The Vrax wanted to destroy us, our people, our planet, everything. This is the only way forward." Jake nodded, though the doubt still lingered in his eyes. "I get it. But what if we can't control it? What if the core turns on us?" Rachel's jaw tightened. She didn't have the answers. All she knew was that the alternative was worse. Submission to the Vrax would mean the end of humanity, the end of everything they had fought for. They had come too far to stop now. "We'll figure it out," she said, her voice resolute. "We always do." Eliza, sitting at a nearby console, looked up from the data stream she was analyzing. "I'm not so sure. We've got the core, but this thing's not exactly user-friendly. It's alien technology, beyond anything we've seen before. It's a weapon, but its exact capabilities, they're a mystery." "We'll make it work," Rachel said again, more firmly this time. She had to believe that. The future of humanity depended on it. The days stretched into a blur as the crew navigated their way through the uncharted system, keeping a low profile, avoiding any potential Vrax patrols. But even as they evaded detection, the tension between them grew. Every conversation was laced with the unspoken fear of what the Helix core could mean, and what would happen if they failed to unlock its power. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Eliza delivered her breakthrough. "I've managed to decipher some of the data," she said, her voice tinged with excitement and caution. "It's not a traditional weapon. At least not in the way we thought. It's a—" She was interrupted by a sudden, violent jolt. The ship lurched as a massive shockwave reverberated through its hull. Alarms blared, red lights flashing as the control panels began to malfunction. "Report!" Rachel barked, grabbing the controls and stabilizing the ship. "We're under attack!" Jake shouted, already moving to the weapon systems. "Vrax ships, 3 of them. They've tracked us here." Rachel's blood ran cold. They had been on high alert for days, expecting a Vrax reprisal, but she had hoped they would have more time. The Vrax were relentless, and now they were closing in for the kill. "Can we outrun them?" Eliza asked, her fingers flying over the navigation console. Rachel's mind raced. No time to outrun them. We need to fight. Jake, prep the guns. Eliza, lock in an emergency jump point. We're getting out of here, or we're going down fighting. The ship systems hummed to life as Jake fired up the weapons, his aim sharp and deadly. The first Vrax ship appeared on their radar, its sleek silhouette cutting through space like a predator hunting its prey. Rachel felt the ship shudder again as laser fire from the enemy ship impacted the shields. We can't take many more of those, Eliza warned, her voice strained. The shields are weakening. Rachel gritted her teeth. She had no intention of losing here. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. Keep them off us, Rachel commanded. I'm jumping us into the outer rim of the system. If we can make it there, we'll be in a better position to make our stand. With a series of calculated movements, Rachel shoved the ship into evasive maneuvers, dodging enemy fire and using debris in the asteroid belt to obscure their movements. The ship rocked violently as they weaved through the field, and Rachel gritted her teeth, her hands gripping the controls as though her very life depended on it. Emergency jump in 10, Eliza said. We'll be out of their range in a few seconds. Keep it steady, Rachel. Jake called out from the gunner's station, firing a barrage at one of the Vrax ships that was getting too close. The seconds felt like hours. The Vrax ships were relentless, but Rachel could feel the pressure mounting. With a roar of engines, the ship engaged the jump sequence, disappearing into the fold of space just as the Vrax's deadly fire hit empty space where they had been. As the jump completed, the stars stretched into bright lines, and the ship coasted into a safe, desolate part of the outer rim. They had escaped, again, but for how long? Eliza slumped back into her seat, her breath coming fast. That was too close. Rachel exhaled, a long, deep breath. We don't have much time. We can't keep running. The Vrax will keep chasing us, and we need to use the core before they catch up again. Jake was quiet for a moment before he spoke, his voice serious. You think it's ready? The core? Rachel turned to face him, her face set in grim determination. We don't have a choice. We use it now, or we lose everything. With that, they began the process of unlocking the core's potential, every moment of it fraught with uncertainty and risk. They had the power to change the course of the war, but would it be enough? The silence of the outer rim system was eerily peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just narrowly escaped. The crew was exhausted, but the weight of their mission was far from over. They had the Helix core, the most powerful weapon humanity had ever known, but they still had no idea how to use it. If they couldn't unlock its secrets, they would remain fugitives, hunted by the Vrax for the rest of their lives. In the dim light of the command deck, Rachel stood before the core, her fingers hovering over the glowing surface. Eliza had spent hours trying to decipher the alien data that surrounded it, her frustration mounting with every passing minute. The core had no interface, no instructions, just raw, untapped power that seemed to hum with a strange, almost sentient energy. But how could they harness that power? How could they turn it into a weapon against the Vrax? I've got something, Eliza finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice was tight with excitement, but also with caution. The core seems to respond to electromagnetic frequencies, specific patterns of signals. I think we can sync it with the ship's systems, but it'll take time. Rachel nodded, stepping closer. How much time? Could be hours, could be minutes. It's hard to say with this kind of alien tech, Eliza replied, her eyes flickering across the streams of data as she worked. But I think I can trigger a reaction. Rachel turned to the rest of the crew. Jake was standing by the weapons console, his hands resting lightly on the controls, as if ready for the inevitable fight. He was a soldier at heart, always ready for the next battle. But even he knew that this time, the odds were different. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a chance to end the Vrax threat once and for all. We're not going to get another shot at this, Rachel said, her voice firm. Once we activate the core, there's no turning back. We need to hit the Vrax where it hurts. Hard. Jake glanced up, his expression unreadable. I don't need to hear a pep talk, Rachel. Just tell me when to fire. Rachel nodded, then turned back to Eliza. Let's make sure we get this right. If we fail now, we don't get another chance. Eliza's hands flew over the controls, the hum of the core growing louder as it began to resonate with the ship's systems. The ship itself seemed to vibrate with the power of the core, as though the two were syncing together. It was an eerie feeling, a sense of impending change. Okay, it's ready, Eliza said, her voice tinged with a mix of hope and anxiety. It's not just a weapon, it's a field generator. A massive disruption wave. If I'm right, we can fire it at the Vrax fleet, and it'll cripple their systems, disable their ships. Rachel looked over at Jake, who was already preparing the weapons systems. That sounds like exactly what we need. We need to make sure we're in position, Jake said, adjusting the targeting system. If this doesn't work, we're going to be sitting ducks out here. We'll need to fire first. Then let's make sure they don't have a chance to retaliate, Rachel said, her resolve hardening. Eliza, how far are we from their fleet? We've got a few hours before they catch up to us. But their ships are fast, if we don't make a move soon, they'll be in range of us first. Perfect, Rachel said. Let's take the fight to them. The crew worked quickly, preparing for the most dangerous and high-stakes attack of their lives. The Vrax were closing in, their ships scattered across the galaxy like a web closing in on its prey. The Resistance could not afford to wait any longer. Eliza fine-tuned the core's energy output, syncing it with the ship's weapons systems. The ship shuddered under the strain, the hum of the alien power filling the cabin as the entire vessel began to feel alive, pulsing with raw potential. Then, Eliza looked up, her eyes wide. It's working. Rachel's pulse quickened as she watched the core respond to the command, a surge of energy flowing from it like a living thing. The ship was now a weapon in itself, bristling with more power than they had ever imagined. We've got incoming, Jake called out, his tone urgent. They're within range. Get ready. Rachel's fingers tightened on the controls. She could see the enemy ships emerging from the folds of space, their massive forms now visible through the viewport. The Vrax were coming in strong, their ships arrayed in tight formation, ready to destroy them without mercy. We're not running anymore, Rachel said, her voice steady as she prepared for the final strike. Activate the field generator, Eliza. Let's end this. Eliza's fingers danced over the console, activating the sequence. The ship's systems powered up, and the core hummed louder than ever. The ship's weaponry locked onto the Vrax fleet, and Rachel felt the power surge through her, as though the ship and the core were one. Then, the ship fired. The energy burst from the ship like a shockwave, a wave of electromagnetic force so powerful that it seemed to distort space itself. The Vrax ships, in their tightly packed formation, were caught in the full brunt of the wave. Their shields flickered, sputtered, and then failed completely as their systems were overwhelmed by the surge of energy. The ship's weapon systems cut through their hulls with ease, disintegrating their ships in seconds. The massive fleet, once an impenetrable wall of destruction, fell apart in a matter of minutes, their ships disabled and reduced to rubble by the power of the core. The remaining Vrax ships, unable to process the damage, were scattered, forced to retreat or destroyed entirely. Rachel watched in awe, her heart pounding. They had done it. The Vrax fleet was shattered, its most powerful ships reduced to nothing. Humanity's greatest threat had been vanquished. But there was no time for celebration. Their victory was hard won, and the universe was still a dangerous place. Not bad for a day's work, Jake said, his voice tinged with something akin to pride. Rachel couldn't help but smile. We did it. But this war, it's not over yet. Eliza looked over at the massive debris field where the Vrax fleet had once been. This is just the beginning, Rachel. We've got the power now. We've got the upper hand. Rachel nodded, gazing out at the stars. The Helix core had given them a chance to take back their future. And now, they would lead humanity into a new era. The galaxy was vast, and the Vrax were just one of many dangers. But humanity had learned something important: when pushed to the brink, they didn't just survive. They fought back. And they won.